If someone in a bar asked me, beer in hand, what it felt like to be eaten alive by 3 mutated Dobermans, I would smash the bottle into his face without hesitation. But this is no joke. My name is Jackson. And just a few hours ago, I experienced the despair of fangs ripping through my throat. Warm blood gushing into the cold wind. It wasn't merely physical torment, it was a chill that reached the depths of my soul. In my previous life, during the 3rd year of barely surviving the apocalypse, Gideon, the shelter leader I trusted most, a hypocritical bastard who constantly went around saying God bless America, smiled as he broke both my legs and threw me into an abandoned sewer. Also, he could keep for himself the half-can of expired antibiotics I had worked so hard to find. The moment he shut the iron door, I could even see the mocking sneer on his face. But God clearly felt that this play wasn't over yet. When I opened my eyes again, I didn't see the flames of hell. Instead, I saw the ceiling of my rundown apartment in Brooklyn, which cost me $1,500 a month in rent. I had been reborn, returning to the first day of the apocalypse. A few hours earlier, a strange rain of red meteors had torn through New York's skyline. The blood rain that followed, like the Grim Reaper's sigh, instantly engulfed the city. Those who were caught in it turned into monsters within minutes, knowing nothing but how to crazily bite into fresh flesh. The street outside my window had already become a living hell, with explosions from car crashes mingling with desperate screams. Outside my apartment door, a series of spine-chilling scratches and low growls could be heard. Several neighbors who had turned into zombies were trying to break through the shoddy composite wood door. In my previous life, when this broken door was breached, Elara and I were forced to flee. Elara, the girl with long burgundy hair whose smile was as radiant as the California sun. She was mercilessly swallowed by the horde of the dead on the Manhattan Bridge while covering my escape. That was the blood-soaked obsession that weighed on my heart for 3 whole years. In this life, I swear I'll make that bastard Gideon repay the blood debt he owes me, with interest. I'll make sure Elara lives more securely than a Wall Street billionaire did before the apocalypse. Bang! Bang! The door groaned as its overloaded frame began to splinter, violently pulling me back from my furious memories to reality. Several rusty nails had already blown loose, and the damned door wouldn't hold for more than a few seconds. I looked around, trying to find a baseball bat or a golf club. Hell, even a steak knife would do. Just then, a crisp synthetic sound suddenly rang out in my mind. It wasn't the cold, mechanical voice from a science fiction movie, but a strange sound effect like something from a retro 8-bit pixel game. Immediately afterward, my entire field of vision underwent a dramatic transformation. In the upper right corner of my vision, 10 pulsating red heart icons appeared out of nowhere, accompanied by 10 hunger icons shaped like chicken drumsticks. At the very bottom of my vision, a transparent inventory bar made up of 9 slots appeared. Good heavens, this was insane. It was practically the interface from the game Minecraft/I. Before I could recover from my shock, the voice in my mind cheerfully informed me that the system had been activated, and that I had gained the ability to extract and convert all matter in this world into blocks. I widened my eyes, fixing my gaze on the heavy oak dining table in the center of the living room. By normal physical standards, there was no way I could move it, let alone use it to barricade the door. But after taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, tentatively clenched my fist, and slammed it hard against the thick tabletop. There was no blood splattering, not even the slightest pain, accompanied by a series of thump, thump, thump sounds, like someone knocking on hollow wood. Web-like cracks appeared across the heavy solid wood table. A few seconds later, with a crisp crack, the entire table disintegrated out of thin air amid a faint white glow. Floating in midair before my eyes was an oak block only the size of a Rubik's Cube. Slowly rotating, I swallowed and slowly walked over. The miniature block shot forward with a whoosh, transforming into a streak of light before automatically flying into the first item slot at the bottom of my field of vision. The number 4 was clearly displayed in the lower right corner of the slot. One table had become 4 oak blocks. This felt absolutely incredible. Not only had I shattered Newton's coffin lid, I'd even casually crumpled Einstein's theory of relativity into a ball of waste paper. Crack! The door was finally smashed to pieces. A zombie with blood all over its face and eyeballs drooping onto its cheeks snarled as it forced half its body inside. Its claws, reeking of the stench of a sewer, were less than a meter from my face. If this had been my previous life, my only choice right now would have been to scream and jump out the window. But now, I'm a man armed with a cheat ability powerful enough to strike across dimensions. Without hesitation, I selected the oak block in my inventory and mentally issued the command to place it in the gap in the front door. In an instant, a 1 cubic meter solid wood block appeared out of thin air with a thunk, fitting perfectly and sealing the doorway shut. The zombie's arm had no time to pull back and was severed cleanly by the heavy block, dropping at my feet amid a spray of black blood. Looking at the block wall, even more indestructible than bulletproof glass, and listening to the zombie futilely pounding on the door outside, I couldn't help bursting into loud laughter in the empty living room. In this apocalypse, where a single moldy loaf of bread is enough to make people draw their guns and shoot each other, I have gained the ability to reshape the world with my bare hands. The game has begun. This time, I am the only player. Watching the entrance become completely sealed off by indestructible wooden blocks, I let out a long sigh of relief. The low growls outside were still there, but to me, they sounded as delightful as a turkey's cries on the eve of Thanksgiving. Although the apartment was safe for the time being, this dilapidated old building was by no means a long-term solution. My experience from my previous life told me that as the zombie virus spread like wildfire, the city would soon lose its water and power supplies. The streets would become packed with wandering monsters, and the thugs would begin killing and looting for half a bottle of mineral water. I had to build a real shelter before everything spiraled completely out of control, and the converted garage and the 2-story air raid shelter beneath this apartment building was the perfect location. It had only 2 narrow entrances and exits, while its walls were made of solid reinforced concrete, easy to defend and difficult to attack. Now it's time to get some exercise. I rolled my neck and looked at the once impossibly heavy furniture in the living room, a nearly maniacal smile curling at the corners of my mouth. I tore through the apartment like a demolition maniac. The sofa? Smash it. The TV cabinet? Smash it. Even the Simmons bed I normally treasured most was ruthlessly punched apart by me into wooden planks and wool blocks. Amid a series of crisp smacking sounds, my inventory quickly filled with large quantities of wood, glass, and stone. In less than 10 minutes, I had completely cleared out the originally cramped apartment. I had even dismantled several non-load-bearing walls into cobblestone blocks. Looking at my packed inventory, an unprecedented sense of satisfaction flooded my nerves. The feeling of reshaping the world with my bare hands was even more exhilarating than winning $1 million in Las Vegas. With a magical backpack containing my entire home on my back, I carefully crawled through the ventilation ducts down to the underground parking garage. The garage was utterly silent, save for a few emergency lights casting a ghastly white glow. Several suitcases abandoned in the frantic escape lay scattered across the floor. Luckily, the place hadn't been overrun by zombies yet. I made my way to the deepest corner of the garage, where the solid rock behind me provided an excellent natural barrier. Time to get to work, Engineer Jackson, I muttered to myself as I summoned the command for cobblestone blocks in my mind. I raised my hand and rapidly tapped at the air. Thud, thud, thud. The dull impacts echoed through the empty garage. Heavy, gray and white stone blocks, each 1 cubic meter in size, appeared out of thin air and fit together with pinpoint precision, leaving no gaps. My movements were now as fast as those of a construction robot with its speed boost activated. 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers. In just half an hour, layer upon layer of unbreakable stone walls rose from the ground, completely sealing off that corner and forming an enclosed space covering a full 200 square meters. I deliberately left an entrance tall enough for 1 person, then pulled wooden planks from my inventory and quickly assembled them in my mind. Crafting command. 6 wooden planks. A faint glimmer flashed, and a sturdy oak door appeared in my hand. With a sharp, I set it in place at the entrance, compared to the apartment's composite door that would shatter with a single kick. This oak door, endowed with attributes by the system, wouldn't be easy to blast open, not without C4 explosives. Inside the block safe house, everything was pitch black due to the lack of a light source. But could that stump a man carrying a crafting table with him at all? I crafted several sticks from chair legs, combined them with coal extracted from the gas stove, and quickly made a few torches. The moment I placed the torches in the stone walls, a warm orange glow instantly illuminated this absolute fortress that belonged to me. Looking at the smooth walls around me, I snapped my fingers in satisfaction. But it still wasn't enough. In my previous life, I hid in the sewers like a rat. In this life, I was going to enjoy life. I covered the entire floor with wooden planks, whose texture felt even better than the finest solid wood flooring. Next, I crafted the wool blocks into a large, soft double bed and placed it in the corner. I also built a simple but perfectly practical furnace out of stone blocks, and even extravagantly used glass blocks to make a floor-to-ceiling window that didn't need to be bulletproof at all, because in this world, glass blocks were far harder than ordinary people could imagine. In less than 2 hours, an underground safehouse comparable to a 5-star presidential suite in this apocalypse had miraculously been created by my bare hands. I lay comfortably sprawled out on the large woolen bed, Gideon's hypocritical bastard of a face surfacing in my mind. In this ruined world, others had to rummage through garbage heaps like dogs just to find food to survive, while I could build an impregnable castle with nothing more than a few pieces of wood and stone. Just as I was about to close my eyes and rest for a while, a burst of hurried footsteps suddenly came from outside the garage, accompanied by a faint cry for help. That voice was far too familiar. My heart lurched, and I sprang up from the bed. That was Elara's voice. She was right outside, and something was chasing her. Help! Is anyone there? Please, save me! Elara's tearful cries for help came through the heavy metal door of the underground parking garage, like a rusty knife savagely twisting in my heart. The scene from my previous life, when she lay in a pool of blood, looking at me in despair, exploded in my mind once more like a nightmare. I lunged toward the oak door of the safe room, every drop of blood in my body boiling. Through the glass block I had left in the wall for observation, I could clearly see the carnage in the garage. The garage's rolling door had been smashed completely open, and in the faint emergency lighting, I saw Elara desperately running deeper into the garage. Her signature burgundy hair was disheveled, her once elegant skirt suit torn in several places, and she was clutching a broken baseball bat she had apparently picked up somewhere. Less than 10 meters behind her, at least 30 zombies surged toward her in a dark mass, like a pack of hyenas that had caught the scent of blood, emitting bone-chilling snarls. Several of those in front even tripped because they were moving too fast, then immediately scrambled back up on all fours and continued the chase. She reached the end of the garage, where a row of abandoned cars blocked her path. There was nowhere left to retreat. The tide of corpses surged like a sea. Elara closed her eyes in despair and raised the half of a bat that couldn't block anything at all. Damn it! I roared, but I didn't lose my reason. If I charged out barehanded, I wouldn't last even 10 seconds. I needed a weapon, one powerful enough to chop these scum into minced meat. I spun around and lunged toward the workbench in the corner. Thank the system, while dismantling the old-fashioned safe in the apartment, I had obtained several extremely rare diamond ore blocks that radiated a deep blue glow. Crafting command: 2 diamonds, 1 stick! I screamed inwardly. An extremely dazzling blue light burst from the workbench, accompanied by a series of crisp anvil strikes. A diamond sword materialized in my hand, its entire body radiating a ghostly blue chill and its blade so sharp it seemed capable of slicing through the air. The instant I gripped the hilt, a powerful sense of strength surged through my arm and spread throughout my body. In the real world, this thing was not only as light as a feather, but also sharp enough to cleave those zombies in half. Flesh and bone alike. Bang! I kicked open the oak door and charged out like a ferocious tiger breaking free from its cage. Get lost, you stinking pieces of trash! My roar exploded through the empty garage, drowning out the zombie snarls. Elara's eyes flew open as she stared in shock at me, a man who had suddenly burst out of a wall that had appeared from nowhere, a glowing sword still in my hand. Hearing the sound, a powerful zombie at the front of the pack turned its head, opened its gore-filled maw, and lunged at me. Without pausing at all, I used the momentum of my sprint, gripped the diamond sword tightly with both hands, and swung it viciously at its neck. Swish! There was no resistance whatsoever. It was even easier than cutting through a slab of hot butter. The zombie's head traced an arc through the air before slamming onto the hood of an abandoned car with a thud. Its headless body even ran 2 more steps forward before collapsing heavily, spraying black blood all over the ground. Oh my God! Elara covered her mouth in horror. I ignored her. I was already seeing red. The diamond sword carved streak after streak of lethal blue lightning through the dim garage. Swish! 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 A slash to the left, a chop to the right, a thrust. It was nothing short of a one-sided massacre. The zombie claws capable of tearing through steel were as fragile as noodles before the diamond sword. Any monster touched by the blade, whether arm, torso, or head, was cleaved cleanly in 2. Blood stained my clothes. But my adrenaline was surging. The frustration and despair of my previous life transformed into an endless thrill of slaughter at that moment. I was like a tireless meat grinder, forcibly carving a bloody path through the dense tide of corpses. The last zombie tried to ambush me from the side, but without even turning my head, I thrust my sword backward and pierced straight through its chest. The blade emerged from its back, bringing with it a trail of black blood mixed with bone fragments. I raised one foot and kicked its corpse hard, sending it flying. The entire garage fell silent again. The only sounds were my heavy breathing and the intense, fetid stench emanating from the severed limbs and scattered body parts covering the floor. More than 30 zombies had been completely wiped out by me alone. Using a single incredible sword, in less than 3 minutes, I turned around and shook the black blood from the diamond sword. Its blade remained as bright as new, radiating a captivating blue glow. I strode over to Elara, who had collapsed on the ground in terror, and stopped just half a meter away from her, looking at her stunning face, dust-streaked and still shaken to the core. My heart pounded wildly. This time, I finally wasn't too late. Amid the rain of blood, I reached out a hand and pulled her up from the ground, then swept her tightly into my arms. She stiffened for a moment, then clung to me as if I were the last lifeline in the world. Sobbing uncontrollably, I gently patted her back, a smile curving at the corners of my lips, infinitely tender, yet carrying an overwhelming dominance. I took the steak I had baked in the oven earlier out of my inventory and held it out in front of her. Welcome to my world, baby. With me here, even if it were hell, I could build a paradise for you. Elara wolfed down the ribeye steak, still sizzling with fat, without even having time to wipe the juices from the corners of her mouth. Her beautiful blue eyes were fixed on me, filled with disbelief, as if I weren't the man who had just saved her, but David Copperfield. Jackson, how did you do that? She swallowed the last bite of steak and let out a satisfied sigh. The outside world has turned into hell, with man-eating monsters everywhere. And you, You actually conjured up a premium steak in an underground parking garage with no electricity, cooked to the perfect temperature and even sprinkled with black pepper sea salt? I smiled and handed her a glass bottle of purified water, shrugging casually. Just think of me as a low-key doomsday survivalist. I told you, men from Brooklyn can always get things done. As for the Minecraft system, I will never mention it to anyone, not even Elara. This isn't just to protect my own secret. It's to protect her as well. In this mad world, anyone with the ability to create things out of thin air would certainly be captured by those lunatics and used as a lab rat for some kind of dissection study. On the 7th day after the apocalypse began, New York City died completely. All communication stations stopped operating, while the water supply system and power grid had already completely collapsed on the 3rd day. Now, the streets outside are littered with rotting corpses and scrapped cars. I know that in the luxurious penthouses of Manhattan's Upper East Side, the once arrogant Wall Street tycoons are probably smashing their neighbors' heads with solid gold golf clubs over half a packet of moldy biscuits, or a can of cat food. Meanwhile, life in my block's safe house could practically be described as decadent. To ensure a sufficient food supply, I expanded an indoor farm of nearly 300 square meters on the other side of the underground parking garage. I covered the floor with dirt blocks, then issued a series of commands in my mind. System command, till the soil. Command, plant seeds. Command, use bone meal to accelerate growth. This was definitely one of the system's most overpowered features. Bone meal synthesized from zombie bones could instantly mature wheat with just a sprinkle over freshly planted seeds, accompanied by a burst of green particle effects. As for the source of the roast meat, I had to admit, my luck was incredible. On the first day of the apocalypse, a transport truck bound for a slaughterhouse in the Bronx overturned at the corner of our street. In the chaos, I lured 2 surviving cows with wheat and led them all the way into a compartment of the safe house. In the logic of Minecraft, all you have to do is feed wheat to 2 cows, and they will reproduce endlessly, producing calves with an absurdly short growth cycle. Using the limitless supply of wood, I crafted a row of stone furnaces. Every day, I only needed to swing my diamond sword a few times, then toss the raw beef into the furnaces. A few minutes later, hot, steaming steaks, practically magical in how well they restored hunger, would be produced non-stop. Not only that, but I also used iron ingots to craft iron buckets. All it took was digging a 2x2 hole in the ground and pouring 2 buckets of water into opposite corners. Just like that, an infinite water source that could never be scooped dry was born. At that moment, the safe house was brightly lit, with torches mounted on the walls bathing the entire space in the warmth of spring. Elara had just enjoyed a soothing hot bath in a bathtub made of quartz blocks. The water had been heated in one of my furnaces. She wore an oversized, clean white shirt, her damp hair draped over her shoulders, giving off the pleasant scent of soap. She walked over to me and, seeing the rows of wooden crates filled to the brim with roasted meat, bread, and clean drinking water, couldn't help but feel her eyes well up with tears. "Jackson, I feel like I'm dreaming." She leaned against my shoulder, her voice soft. "I thought we were all going to die out there, or turn into beasts like those thugs. But you gave me a real home." I turned around, gently drew her into my arms, and lowered my head to kiss her forehead. "I told you, I would build a paradise for you. This is only the beginning. Once things outside stabilize a little, I'll build you a real castle, the kind with gardens and fountains. I'm not bragging, as long as you give me enough time to gather resources. Let alone a castle, even recreating the Empire State Building in the wasteland would just mean spending a little more time placing blocks." We sat on a spacious woolen bed, eating sweet baked potatoes and juicy steaks, enjoying a rare moment of peace in the apocalypse. However, this luxurious life of crushing superiority eventually attracted uninvited guests. Several furnaces burned day and night, yet that rich, maddeningly delicious aroma of roasting meat still drifted out through the ventilation ducts of the underground parking garage. Just as I was about to fall asleep with Elara in my arms, an extremely dull impact suddenly came from the outermost stone wall of the safe house. It wasn't the mindless scratching of zombies. It was someone violently dismantling it with heavy tools. Bang, bang. "Boss, that smell is definitely coming from in here. My God, that's the smell of fucking steak." A gruff man's voice came through the stone wall. Then, a voice that had jolted me awake from nightmares throughout both my lives slowly rang out, dripping with nauseating hypocrisy. "Blow it open. In this goddamn world, hoarding so many good things is a one-way ticket to hell. May God bless whoever's inside. Because I sure as hell won't." "Gideon!" I suddenly clenched my fist, my knuckles cracking sharply. A ghostly blue diamond sword instantly appeared in my hand, radiating a bloodthirsty, icy gleam. "In my previous life, I treated you like a savior, only to be eaten alive by mutant dogs. And in this life, you've actually delivered yourself right to my doorstep. Jackson, who's out there?" Elara grabbed my arm nervously, her face instantly turning pale. She could hear the cruelty and greed in the voice of the man they called the boss. "A pack of rabid dogs looking for death." I patted the back of her hand reassuringly. Stay on the bed and don't move. No matter what happens, don't come out. I hurried to the stone wall at the outermost layer of the safe house and looked outside through the glass blocks I had left in place. At the entrance to the underground garage, 2 modified black Ford Raptors were parked. Their headlights illuminated the area as brightly as daylight. About a dozen heavily armed thugs were gathered outside my block defense wall. They carried baseball bats and fire axes, while several held old-fashioned Remington shotguns and AR-15 rifles. And the man standing at the very front, wearing a black tactical vest, sporting a full beard, and with eyes as cold and sinister as a viper's, I would recognize even if he were reduced to ashes. Gideon. In my previous life. It was at this very moment that he gathered a group of street thugs and established a brutal shelter. He controlled hundreds of people with food, deciding who lived and who died like a feudal lord. And I had once been his most loyal scavenger, risking my life to search for supplies amid hordes of corpses for the sake of a promise he made, only to be abandoned by him without the slightest mercy in the end. Move it! What the hell is this wall made of? Why won't it break? A bald, burly man swung a sledgehammer and brought it down hard on the cobblestone block. With a resounding clang, the hammer bounced straight back, leaving the bald man's web of his thumb bleeding from the impact, while the cobblestone wall remained completely uncracked. This isn't scientific. What the fuck is this place? The bald man cursed in anguish. In the logic of Minecraft, trying to destroy blocks without the appropriate tool, such as a pickaxe, is not only extremely inefficient, but many hard blocks will not drop even if you hammer away at them for days and nights. To these thugs, who knew nothing but brute force, this 1-meter-thick cobblestone wall was an absolutely impenetrable wall of size. Gideon narrowed his eyes and stepped forward. He ran his hand over the cold stone wall, a greedy glint flashing in his eyes. This is definitely an advanced military bunker. Gideon sneered. Smell that meat? That's not dog food. The people inside must have stockpiled a huge amount of supplies. There might even be a generator and water purification equipment. Boys, take this place, and we can live like kings for the rest of our lives. Roar! The thugs let out a burst of excited howls. Use C4 explosives. Blow that door open for me. Gideon took a few steps back and issued the order. 2 thugs immediately pulled yellow plastic explosives from their backpacks and began attaching detonators to the joints in the stone wall. Seeing this, I let out a cold laugh. If they were using ordinary nuclear bombs, they might be able to destroy these blocks. But with just a few packets of lousy C4? That was nothing short of a pipe dream. Boom! A deafening explosion echoed through the underground parking garage. The powerful shock wave kicked up a massive cloud of dust and set the alarms of the Ford Raptors blaring. Storm in! Kill all the men and leave the women alive! All the supplies are ours! Gideon shouted arrogantly through the smoke. However, as the smoke gradually cleared, everyone stood there with their mouths agape like ducks being strangled, unable to utter a sound. That massive round stone wall still stood firmly in place, let alone being blasted open. It hadn't even lost a single chip of stone. This is impossible. The composure vanished from Gideon's face in an instant, replaced by utter shock and disbelief. He suddenly drew the pistol from his waist and fired wildly at the stone wall. Bang, bang, bang! The bullets struck the stone wall, sending up only a few sparks before bouncing off feebly. Save your effort, Gideon. I pressed the switch of a simple loudspeaker beside the stone wall, and my voice rang out coldly. Hearing the sound, the thugs outside immediately raised their weapons and aimed them at the stone wall. Gideon's expression changed, and he shouted, "Listen up in there! We've got more than a dozen guns. You'd better open the door obediently and hand over all your supplies. Maybe I'll even be merciful enough to spare your miserable life." Spare my miserable life? I couldn't help laughing aloud inside the safe house. That familiar hypocritical tone was truly nauseating. Gideon, spare me your ridiculous tricks. I know exactly what kind of person you are. You want supplies? Fine. They're right here. Come in and take them yourself. As I spoke, I quickly brought up the redstone repeaters, and dispensers in my inventory in my mind. Those fools have no idea what kind of entity they're up against. Do they really think my shelter is nothing more than a wall? Since they want to play, I'll play a bigger game with them. I quickly dug out several blocks on the inside of the stone wall, embedded dispensers in them, and filled them with arrows enchanted with flame, which I had exchanged gold for in the system shop. Finally, I connected a redstone circuit to a wooden button. Gideon, I'm giving you one last chance. Take your people and get out of my sight. Otherwise, this time next year will be the anniversary of your deaths. My voice came through the loudspeaker, laced with a blood-curdling murderous intent. Fuck. Stop bluffing. You think hiding in that turtle shell means there's nothing I can do to you? Gideon was completely enraged. He turned to his men and roared, "Go get a chainsaw and a welding torch. I refuse to believe we can't cut through this damn thing." Watching those thugs outside acting like clowns, my gaze turned completely cold. If you're that eager to go to hell, then I'll gladly send you there. I raised my hand and, without the slightest hesitation, pressed down hard on the wooden button. The symphony of death officially begins. Click. As the wooden button was pressed, The redstone circuit instantly lit up with a dazzling red glow. Immediately afterward, the dense sound of objects tearing through the air, whoosh, 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 erupted throughout the underground parking garage. Those dispensers hidden within the cobblestone walls were like the Grim Reaper's machine guns, instantly spewing dozens of enchanted arrows trailing dazzling flames. Their speed and penetrating power far exceeded those of any compound bow in the real world. They streaked through the dim garage in deadly lines of fire, striking the mobsters with deadly precision. Ah! Screams rang out one after another. The arrows enchanted with flame not only pierced the mobsters' tactical vests with ease, but also erupted into fierce magical fire the instant they touched flesh. Several mobsters at the very front instantly became burning men. They screamed and rolled across the ground, trying to extinguish the flames engulfing them. But the fire was an unnatural blaze that defied the laws of physics, and could not be easily put out. The garage was immediately filled with the nauseating stench of charred human flesh. Enemy attack! Open fire! Open fire! I tell you! Gideon backed away in terror, hiding behind the door of a Ford Raptor as he screamed frantically. The remaining thugs came to their senses, raised their AR-15s and shotguns, and poured ammunition into the stone wall. The dense gunfire was deafening, and the muzzle flashes lit up the entire garage. However, this level of suppressive fire was nowhere near enough to even scratch my block's safe house. Jackson, are you okay? Elara's anxious voice came from the inner room. I'm perfectly fine. These people aren't even qualified to hurt me, I replied with a cold laugh. Although the redstone contraption unexpectedly took out a few of the thugs, its range was limited. If they kept hiding behind the vehicles and suppressing us with gunfire, this stalemate would be difficult to break anytime soon. It was time to hit them with some true dimensional superiority. I walked to the spacious area of the safe house and took out the iron ingots I had smelted in the furnace over the past few days. Crafting command: iron blocks. 4. Accompanied by the dull clang of heavy metal. 4 solid iron blocks, each weighing several tons and gleaming with a cold metallic sheen, appeared out of thin air before me. Like building with blocks, I arranged 3 of them into the shape of a T. Then I took a deep breath and pulled out from the corner of my inventory the pumpkin I had accidentally discovered in the flower bed downstairs, which the system had endowed with vitality. Come forth, my guardian deity. I carefully placed the pumpkin at the very top of the T-shaped iron blocks. VRRR, a strange radiance instantly enveloped this pile of cold iron blocks and pumpkins. Immediately afterward, an ear-grating metallic scraping sound rang out. The heap of inanimate objects actually began to twist and deform violently, ultimately transforming into a steel behemoth nearly 3 meters tall, its entire body forged from heavy iron, with arms as thick as load-bearing pillars. An iron golem, the ultimate symbol of physical defense and strength in Minecraft. Its pumpkin head, devoid of any facial features and possessing only 2 glowing red orbs for eyes, slowly turned and locked onto the hostile mobs outside the oak door. Roar! The iron golem let out a metallic bellow like a subwoofer, making the entire safe house hum and reverberate. Open the door and let the dog out. I let out a cold laugh, stepped forward, and yanked open the heavy oak door. The instant the door opened, several stray bullets shot through the gap and struck the iron golem's massive body. Aside from sending a few sparks flying, they left no mark whatsoever. The iron golem strode forward with heavy steps, like a main battle tank, forcing its way through the doorway. The moment its enormous body appeared outside, the gunfire throughout the garage actually fell silent for a brief moment. Gee God, what kind of monster is that? A thug stammered in terror, his eyes widening. He didn't even notice the shotgun slipping from his hands and hitting the ground. Is that a Terminator? Or some kind of secret weapon? Fire! Blow its head off! Gideon roared hoarsely, though his voice was already filled with unconcealed fear. A dense hail of bullets poured down on the iron golem like a torrential rainstorm. But according to Minecraft's mechanics, ordinary kinetic weapons were almost completely ineffective against this magical creature made entirely of pure iron blocks. The iron golem charged through a hail of bullets, advancing with unstoppable force toward the nearest Ford Raptor. It extended its enormous steel arms, grabbed the front of the pickup, and violently heaved it upward. Boom! The 2-ton Raptor pickup was actually flipped onto the ground by the iron golem as easily as a toy. The 3 thugs hiding behind the truck were crushed beneath it, letting out blood-curdling screams as blood streamed across the ground from under the chassis. Monster! It's a monster! The remaining thugs completely broke down. They dropped their weapons and turned to flee. But how could the iron golem let them escape? It strode forward on its long legs and caught up with the burly man in just a few steps. Its massive iron arm swung viciously, cutting through the air with a howl. Bang! Like a ripe watermelon struck by a sledgehammer. The burly man did not even have time to scream before the iron golem smashed his entire upper body into a bloody, mangled pulp, sending severed limbs splattering across the surrounding walls. A massacre. A massacre without a shadow of a doubt. In the face of the iron golem's absolute power, these armed thugs who fancied themselves rulers of the apocalypse were as fragile as lambs awaiting slaughter. Screams, the sound of bones snapping, and dull metallic impacts intertwined into a despairing symphony of death. Gideon watched the hellish scene before him, his legs giving way as he collapsed to the ground. The composure he had flawlessly maintained until now was utterly shattered in the face of absolute violence. I slowly stepped out from behind the door, the diamond sword radiating a ghostly blue chill clenched in my hand, and looked down at the enemy who had cast me into the abyss in my previous life. Gideon, I told you just now, this time next year will be the anniversary of your death. I advanced toward him step by step, not a trace of mercy in my eyes, only the frenzied flames of revenge I had suppressed for 3 years. As he watched the iron golem smash his subordinates into bloody pulp like swatting flies, the ruthlessness in Gideon's eyes was completely swallowed by fear. He scrambled toward the garage exit, slipping in the blood covering the floor, as pitiful as a stray dog fleeing its ruined home. I didn't order the iron golem to chase him, kill him with a single sword strike? That would be far too easy for this piece of trash. In my previous life, he broke both my legs and shoved me into a sewer filled with mutant dogs and endless despair. I had to repay him 10-fold, 100-fold. For that unforgettable agony. Run back. Gideon! Run back to your lair and call all your lackeys. I'll be waiting for you here. I threw my head back and laughed wildly at his fleeing figure. I knew he would definitely come back. A dictator as extremely selfish and controlling as him would never tolerate the existence of a shelter in this neighborhood that he couldn't control, especially one possessing such terrifying power and supplies. He would surely bring all his forces to bear, attempting to completely destroy me through sheer numbers or overwhelming firepower. And that was exactly what I wanted. When I returned to the safe house, Elara was looking at me with an incredibly complex expression. There was shock in her eyes, along with a trace of awe. But more than anything else, there was unreserved trust. Did you let him go so you could wipe them all out? She asked softly, coming over to help me brush the small amount of dust from my face. I clasped her hand and nodded. If we don't eliminate this cancer completely, we'll never be able to live in peace. Besides, this is also the return gift I owe him. Things are going to get a little bloody from here on out. So stay inside and plug your ears with wool. After settling Elara in, I stepped out of the safe house once again. Gideon and the main force would be returning in about an hour. That was more than enough time to prepare a hell experience package he would never forget. I took out an iron pickaxe crafted from iron ingots and began digging furiously along the only route from the garage to the safe house. With the system's boost, the hard concrete floor broke apart beneath my pickaxe like tofu. In less than 20 minutes, I dug a massive pit on this unavoidable route, 10 meters long and wide and 3 meters deep. Next, it was time to witness a miracle. I took several iron buckets filled with scorching liquid from my inventory. A few days ago, while exploring the depths of the subway tunnels, I had accidentally discovered an underground lava lake. In Minecraft, once lava is scooped up with an iron bucket, it becomes an extremely terrifying high-temperature killing weapon. Standing at the edge of the pit, I poured out the lava buckets. Sizzle, dark red, boiling lava flowed down the walls of the pit, instantly covering its entire floor. The astonishing heat instantly evaporated the damp air in the garage, causing the temperature throughout the space to soar, as if they were inside a giant oven. But that still wasn't enough. If it were merely an obvious lava pit, they wouldn't jump in unless they were blind. I once again brought out redstone dust, redstone repeaters, sticky pistons, and a large number of wooden planks. I covered the entire area above the deep pit with wooden planks, disguising it as ordinary flat ground. Then, beneath the planks, I installed an entire set of trapdoor mechanisms controlled by sticky pistons, concealing them extremely carefully. Finally, I connected a long redstone circuit to an extremely well-hidden lever, then retreated to the front of the safe house. Come on, Gideon. Welcome to my world, I sneered, gripping the lever that would decide life or death tightly in my hand. About 40 minutes later, an extremely loud roar of engines and the chaotic sound of footsteps came from outside the underground garage. Gideon had truly thrown everything he had into this. This time, he had brought not only dozens of heavily armed men, but had even managed to get hold of a heavy bulldozer fitted with bulletproof steel plates from God knows where. The bulldozer roared as it violently shoved aside the abandoned vehicles blocking the garage entrance, and barged in menacingly. Gideon stood in the bed of the pickup truck behind it, holding a loudhailer in his hand. Jackson, you coward hiding behind that wall. I know you've got a tin can monster, but today, I'm going to use this machine to crush your turtle shell, and that monster along with it, into scrap. Dozens of thugs followed behind the bulldozer and pickup, a dark, swarming mass jeering and shouting as if they could already see victory on the horizon. I stood behind the cobblestone wall, coldly watching them step into my trap one by one. 10 meters, 5 meters, 3 meters. I silently counted down in my mind, when the bulldozer's heavy tracks, along with the dozens of thugs following behind it, had completely moved onto the section of planks I had disguised as level ground. I took a deep breath, then yanked down the lever in my hand. Click! The crisp click of the mechanism being triggered seemed insignificant amid the noisy garage. But the next second, rumble, crack, Dozens of adhesive pistons supporting that huge section of wooden boards retracted in an instant. Deprived of their support, the boards collapsed under the crushing weight of the bulldozer, and dozens of people. What's going on? Help! My foot! The thugs who had just been charging forward aggressively, along with the heavy bulldozer, suddenly lost their balance and fell into the enormous 3-meter-deep pit. Waiting for them at the bottom of the pit was not cold concrete, but dark red lava boiling and bubbling at temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius. Sizzle! The bone-chilling sound of flesh burning instantly drowned out all the screams. The first person to fall into the lava did not even manage to let out a complete scream before being swallowed by the terrifying heat and reduced to a wisp of black smoke. The heavy bulldozer crashed into the lava pool, sending a vast spray of searing lava raining down on the thugs still struggling at the edge of the pit, scalding them until they writhed across the ground. No! This is impossible! What the hell is this? Because Gideon was standing in the bed of the pickup truck behind them. He had narrowly avoided falling in, but seeing the horrific scene before him, like a hellish furnace, he was scared out of his wits, and a large patch of his crotch instantly became wet. I slowly emerged from behind the stone wall, diamond sword in hand. The iron golem followed loyally behind me. Like an insurmountable mountain, the firelight reddened my face as I watched Gideon trembling at the edge of the pit, a cruel, cold smile curling at the corners of my mouth. Gideon, don't you like pushing people into the depths of despair? Now it's your turn. Enjoy the flames of hell. Jackson, no, please, don't kill me. Gideon's psychological defenses completely collapsed as he looked at his men, reduced to charred corpses around him. He dropped the megaphone, fell to his knees on the scorching concrete, and crawled toward me, sobbing uncontrollably. I was wrong. I'll give you all my supplies, my shelter, my weapons, even my women, all of it. Please, have mercy, for God's sake. God, when you broke my legs and threw me into the sewers to feed the mutant dogs, God didn't come to save me. I walked up to him and looked down at that nauseating face. The despair of my previous life and the exhilaration of this one intertwined, making my blood boil. You, what are you talking about? I've never done anything like that. Gideon's eyes widened in terror, clearly unable to understand what I meant. You don't need to understand, I said coldly, casually twirling the diamond sword in my hand. But I didn't slash at him with the sword. That would have been letting him off too easily. I raised my foot and viciously kicked Gideon in the chest. Amid his pig-like screams, he traced a parabola through the air before landing precisely in the enormous lava pit churning with dark red bubbles. Sizzle, without giving him any chance to struggle. The extreme heat instantly devoured his screams along with his flesh, leaving behind only a wisp of black smoke circling beneath the garage's domed ceiling. The blood feud from my previous life had completely vanished in this moment. I felt some heavy shackle deep within my soul shatter with a resounding crash, replaced by supreme power over everything. The crisis had been resolved, but I knew the underground garage was ultimately only a temporary refuge. The zombie virus was still mutating, and the outside world was rotting away at an accelerating pace. I had once promised Elara that I would build her a true castle with gardens and fountains, and now, no one and no rule could stop me. Over the next few months, I became the craziest and most efficient creator in this wasteland world. Using the game's water and lava mechanics, I created extremely rare and indestructible obsidian blocks. Under the laws of physics in Minecraft, these pitch-black blocks formed where water and lava meet possess absolute blast resistance. Even military-grade C4 explosives or a tank's armor-piercing rounds couldn't leave so much as a scratch on them. I led Elara out of the underground parking garage and onto a ruined area of Brooklyn. Clear the area? At my command, an army of hundreds of iron golems, mass-produced from iron blocks and pumpkins, thundered into action. Like an inexhaustible tide of steel, they crushed the tens of thousands of zombies roaming the area into a carpet of mangled flesh. Then, the miracle began. Using hundreds of thousands of obsidian blocks, I raised a massive city from the wasteland of New York, covering an area comparable to several football fields. The 30-meter-high black wall stood like the wall of sighs, keeping all the despair and zombies firmly outside. The gate in the city wall was a gigantic automated mechanism I built with redstone circuits, repeaters, and sticky pistons. No key could open it, only a command from my mind. Inside the walls, I used vast quantities of dirt and flowing water to create layer upon layer of aerial terraces. Wheat, carrots, and potatoes, accelerated to maturity with bone meal, forever maintained a golden harvest. The fully automated redstone meat roaster operated day and night, producing steaming food like an assembly line. At the very center of the city stood an extremely luxurious spired castle. I used a vast amount of diamond ore to craft one shimmering block of diamond after another, embedding them into the castle's dome and outer walls. During the day, they refracted dazzling light under the sun. At night, they became the brightest beacons in the silent, lifeless city. It's so beautiful. It's practically a miracle. At that moment, Elara was dressed in a gorgeous gown carefully tailored from the finest wool and leather, nestled in my arms. We stood on the highest terrace of the Diamond Castle, gazing down over our domain. Beneath the castle, in the courtyard, a fountain made of quartz blocks sprays a clear, infinite water source. A sea of roses nurtured with bone meal is in full bloom, while several iron golems quietly patrol the garden paths. Beyond the city walls lay two entirely different worlds. Countless survivors, barely clothed and emaciated, trudged in from every corner of New York. They knelt outside the enormous obsidian walls, devoutly kissing the cold stone and gazing up at this miraculous city that radiated the brilliance of diamonds. They called it Eden and regarded me as the new god who had emerged after the apocalypse, as long as they were willing to offer up the gold, iron ore, and other resources they had scavenged from the ruins. I could reward them through the openings in the walls with several pieces of roasted meat that would never grow moldy and a bottle of pure water. Amid this catastrophe that had befallen all of humanity, former presidents and billionaires had long since been reduced to bleached bones. But I, Jackson, the survivor who had once been trampled into the mud, had used a block system that defied the laws of physics to become the sole and absolute overlord of this new world. The feeling of beating the game is truly something else. I raised a glass of fruit wine brewed from apples and sugarcane, gently swirling it as I watched the tide of zombies surge toward us in the distance, only to scratch futilely at the obsidian walls. A wild, arrogant smile curled at the corners of my lips. This is only the beginning, my queen. I turned and kissed Elara's red lips. In this apocalypse where the blocks have awakened, as long as I still have blocks in my hands, the entire world will be reshaped according to my will. The end.